During the closing months of the war in the Pacific, Japanese forces, hoping to stave off defeat, began using large numbers of kamikaze airplanes for suicide attacks on Allied warships and, to a lesser extent, against invasion forces already ashore and against B-29s on bombing missions over the home islands. The first kamikazes were encountered during the battle for the Philippines in October 1944. Initially, it appeared as if the Japanese planes were hitting Allied warships by accident after their pilots had been killed by anti-aircraft fire. However, as more and more ships were struck, it became clear that the enemy pilots were intentionally crashing their planes into the targets, even though it meant certain death for them. When the Allies landed on Okinawa in April 1945, they gathered together the greatest invasion fleet ever to operate in the Pacific, 1,300 ships of all kinds and sizes, carrying 100,000 soldiers and Marines and additional thousands of Navy crew members. The most inviting of these ships to the kamikaze pilot were the aircraft carriers with their flat tops and enormous supplies of highly flammable gasoline. If these could be put out of action, they would be unable to launch their hundreds of airplanes for many months to come. As a rule, kamikaze planes comprised only part of an attacking force. Some of the Japanese planes simply dropped their bombs and returned home, while others engaged Allied fighters which had been sent aloft to defend their ships from attack. Amid the confusion of aerial battle, the kamikazes attempted to sneak through the defending fighters, select a profitable target, and dive or fly into it. At first, kamikazes appeared only during the day, attacking like a swarm of angry bees. Before long, they started showing up at night whenever a target could be spotted in the darkness. Regardless of when they appeared, however, they were met with devastating anti-aircraft fire, and many were shot down before they could reach their intended target. Though strange by Western standards, the Japanese flyer considered it an honor to die as a kamikaze. Almost from the day of his birth, he had been taught, both at home and at school, that the only alternative to victory was death. Surrender was so disgraceful that it was unthinkable. Before taking off on his last mission, a kamikaze pilot was honored with a ritual during which he received a ceremonial belt. He then drank final toasts to the Emperor, to the life of the Japanese Empire, and to a glorious death. It was his fervent desire to die in such a manner as to emulate the true meaning of the word kamikaze, divine wind, which according to Japanese legend was a providential typhoon sent by the sun goddess in the 13th century to wreck the huge invasion fleet of the Mongol conqueror Kublai Khan. In the final tally, an estimated 4,000 Japanese pilots sacrificed their lives as kamikazes. However, they sank 34 American ships and damaged 288 others, including 36 aircraft carriers, 15 battleships, and 87 destroyers. Kamikazes created so much havoc that shipyards in California were filled with warships sent home for repairs, while others were sent as far as the East Coast. In fact, the kamikaze threat became so great that between April 17th and May 11th, 1945, 75% of the B-29 missions flown against Japan were diverted from their strategic mission to knocking out the kamikaze air bases. After the war had ended, a United States Strategic Bombing Survey concluded the kamikazes had wrought such damage that if the attacks had been sustained in greater power and concentration, they might have been able to cause us to withdraw or revise our strategic plans. Fortunately, kamikazes shot down by the U.S. Navy during attacks at sea and destroyed on the ground by Air Force B-29s during bombing raids depleted Japan's airplane inventory faster than the losses could be replaced.